Welcome to the video that's going to talk about medians, centroids, and along their constructions as well. So this is some new vocabulary, and we need to make sure we are studying this vocabulary because if you get a question that talks about the median of a triangle and you don't know what the median of a triangle is, it's going to be really hard to answer that question. So you got to make sure that you're making time to study these new words and study their definitions just so that you can answer questions more effectively. So the median of a triangle, or a median of a triangle, is a line segment that goes from the vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. So in this example, the median is going from this top vertex here, and it is being drawn down, and where it's connecting to the opposite side, that is our midpoint. So we know a little bit about the midpoint already. We know that the midpoint splits segments up into two congruent parts, right? So if you have a median, you'll know that this segment here is congruent to this segment here. So we got to get used to putting those marks to show that we are making those conclusions in our diagrams. Now, we also should be able to go backwards. So for example, if I have a triangle here, and let's say there's a segment drawn from a vertex down here, right? Let's say this is all that we are given. If we're given a diagram that looks like this, what we would have to be able to do is actually conclude, hey, I see that this is a segment that's going from a vertex down to the opposite side, and I see that at that meeting point we have congruent segments created. So if I was given a diagram like this, I should be able to conclude that that is a median, right? So you kind of have to be able to go both ways. Now, this is one simple example. Now, again, it's from the vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. We've only accounted for one vertex so far. There are 3 vertices of a triangle. So getting into some more complex examples, one of them is already drawn for us, but we can also go from this vertex down to the opposite side, right, at the midpoint. And again, if this was the midpoint, I know that this segment and this segment would be congruent. And then in another color, we could do it in green. We would also have to go from this vertex down to the opposite side. And again, this would be my midpoint, so I would be able to conclude that those 2 segments are congruent. And make sure we're differentiating with our segment. Notice that I have pairs of 1 tick mark, 2 tick marks, and 3 tick marks. We have to differentiate there. Now, when we draw our 3 medians, they intersect at one point. Now, where that intersection is called the centroid of our triangle. Now, this is another new vocabulary word, so you need to make sure that you are taking time to remember these. And again, in your notes, what you should be doing is writing down these definitions and drawing the pictures with the labels. So again, centroid is where all of the 3 medians intersect. Now we're going to spend some time going over these constructions as well. Now, just to be clear, just to make sure we know, we should again be able to go backwards, right? So this is a more complex diagram. Now, if you were given something like this, you would have to be able to identify, hey, I have a bunch of segments going on, but what I'm noticing is that at all 3 of the intersection points, I'm seeing that my sides are being split into congruent parts, right? So then we would know from this, I would know that all 3 segments here are medians, right? But then also, I see that all of my 3 medians are intersecting here. So this, I would know that that's my centroid. So again, getting in the habit of looking at labels to try to build a story of what's going on is something that we have to get used to doing. Now, we're going to go over these constructions. Now, to construct the median, remember, it has to go from the vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. So what we need to know is we would need to know the midpoint of our side. So the first thing we're going to do is construct the median from vertex C, which is here, to side AB. Right? So if we want to go from C to AB, the first thing we need is the midpoint of AB. If we don't have the midpoint of AB, then we cannot complete this construction. So this is prior knowledge. Now, to construct the midpoint, we can construct the perpendicular bisector of our side, right? So if you remember, and I'm going to do this in a color, let's do this in red. If you remember, you put your needle on one end point, you go more than halfway, and you make your arcs. So your arcs are going to go down here and up here, and then you put your needle on the other vertex, and again, you make your set of arcs. Then your last step, once you have your intersections, you take your straight edge and you draw straight down. Now, I know that this is my midpoint. Once you have the midpoint of your side, your second step here is to just connect with your straight edge a line from vertex to midpoint. So this isn't anything fancy. You literally just take your straight edge, and again, we'll do this in red. You take your straight edge, and since we want to go from vertex C, you put your straight edge there, and you would connect all the way down to that midpoint. Maybe we should do this in blue. So from vertex C all the way down to that midpoint, right? And this in blue, that is our median. Now, again, the centroid is the intersection points of our three medians. So what I want you guys to try to do is construct the centroid on your own. So again, you have to construct the other two medians. So we already went from vertex C down to AB. Then we also need to go, our next one would be going from vertex B to AC. And then the last step would be going from vertex A to side BC. So again, you can follow the two steps that we wrote down, where we said you construct the midpoint of whatever segment or whatever side, and then you just connect a line from the vertex to that midpoint using your straight edge.